And yet, somehow, the room shifted around. And yet, somehow, the room shifted around you as if your words carried less weight. In meetings, you offer an idea and it drifts past unnoticed. Minutes later, someone else repeats it in slightly different words, and suddenly it lands. In social settings, you listen carefully, you nod, you respond kindly. But people interrupt you more easily than they interrupt others. It is not open disrespect. It is subtler than that. It is the feeling of being slightly overlooked, slightly underestimated, slightly easier to talk over. And over time, that small difference begins to shape how people position you in their minds. The first instinct is to turn inward and assume something is wrong. Maybe you are not confident enough. Maybe you are not charismatic. Maybe you lack some invisible quality other people seem to possess naturally. But most of the time, it is not a character flaw. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is not that you are too soft or too kind. What you are experiencing is not a verdict on your worth. It is a response to signals, small, almost invisible signals, that travel ahead of your words before anyone consciously decides how to treat you. Human beings do not evaluate status, confidence, or authority primarily through logic. They read pacing, they read pauses, they read posture, breathing, reaction time. They sense whether your nervous system is steady or seeking approval. Before anyone analyzes what you say, their brain has already formed an impression based on how you occupy space. Respect in many situations is less about content and more about composure. It is less about volume and more about steadiness. In Japan, there is a long-standing cultural emphasis on presence rather than performance. Authority is rarely loud. Competence is not announced. It is implied through stability. A person who speaks calmly, moves deliberately, and reacts minimally often commands more quiet respect than someone who tries to impress. The strength is not dramatic. It is contained. And because it is contained, it feels reliable. You do not need to become someone louder or more dominant. You do not need to change your personality. The shift begins with micro-adjustments, small habits that subtly change the signals you send. These habits do not manipulate people. They simply align your outer behavior with inner steadiness. When you adjust the signals, something interesting happens. The environment recalibrates. People pause a little longer before interrupting you. They listen a bit more carefully. They respond with slightly more consideration. And it happens without force, without confrontation, without you demanding anything at all. That is the quiet power of presence. Have you ever noticed how quickly you respond in conversations? Someone asks a question, and you answer immediately. Someone makes a suggestion, and you nod before they finish. There is a subtle eagerness in your timing, not desperation, just readiness. You smile quickly to ease tension. You laugh lightly to smooth over awkward pauses. You agree fast to keep things flowing. None of this feels dramatic. In fact, it feels polite, cooperative, considerate. But over time, these micro-movements create a pattern, and people, without realizing it, begin adjusting their internal ranking of you. The difficult truth is that social hierarchy forms faster than we think. Within seconds, the brain starts categorizing who leads, who follows, who reacts, who sets the tempo. And tempo matters more than most people realize. The person who speaks first is not always seen as strong. Often, it is the person who reacts last, who allows space before responding, who appears more grounded. When you answer immediately, when you rush to fill silence, when your face shifts quickly with every emotional cue, you are signaling responsiveness. Responsiveness is kind, but too much responsiveness can be interpreted as dependence on the interaction. This is not a flaw in you. It is not weakness. Most people who respond quickly do so because they value harmony. They want others to feel comfortable. They fear being perceived as cold or distant. Many learned early in life that being agreeable kept things smooth, so your nervous system learned to anticipate, to smooth edges before conflict even appears. That instinct once protected you. It kept relationships stable. It made you likable. But what protects harmony does not always command respect. Psychologically, humans equate slower response time with confidence. Not dramatically slow, just slightly unhurried. When someone pauses before answering, it signals that they are not scrambling for approval. When someone does not immediately laugh at a joke, it signals emotional independence. The brain reads these delays as internal stability, and stability feels safe. Safe feels authoritative. Authoritative earns different treatment. In Japanese workplace culture, the dynamic between senpai and kohai illustrates this subtly. The senior rarely rushes to respond. They speak after observing. They do not compete for airtime. They do not react strongly to every comment. Their restraint is not coldness, it is composure. Because they are steady, others instinctively orient around them. They set the pace simply by not chasing it. You do not need to become silent or distant. The adjustment is small. Add 2 seconds before responding. Let a question sit for a breath. If someone finishes speaking, allow a short pause before you answer. Resist the urge to fill empty space with nervous humor. Maintain soft eye contact and breathe once before you speak. These micro-pauses shift the emotional geometry of the interaction. Silence, when held calmly, does not weaken you. It recalibrates perception. The person who is comfortable in silence appears less dependent on validation, and the less you appear to need approval, the more naturally others extend respect. You may have noticed that when you feel slightly anxious, your words begin to move faster than your thoughts. Sentences compress. Pauses disappear. You are not trying to rush. It just happens. The energy behind your speech subtly accelerates, as if you are trying to deliver your idea before it can be questioned. And even when your point is intelligent, the speed carries a hidden signal: urgency. Urgency in social perception can be mistaken for uncertainty. This does not mean you are insecure. In fact, many thoughtful and intelligent people speak quickly because their minds process quickly. The problem is not your intelligence. It is the translation of inner speed into outer pacing. When speech accelerates, listeners subconsciously feel that you are seeking agreement. They sense momentum instead of steadiness, and steadiness is what communicates confidence. When someone speaks 10% slower than the room, something interesting happens. The energy shifts toward them. The slower cadence suggests deliberation. It suggests that the speaker is not afraid of being interrupted. It implies that their words are not chasing approval. They are simply being placed carefully. The human brain associates controlled pacing with certainty. It reads slow breathing and measured tone as a regulated nervous system. And a regulated nervous system feels safe to align with. In Japan, you can observe this in news anchors, business leaders, even public officials. The delivery is rarely dramatic. The tone remains even. There are pauses between phrases. The rhythm is consistent. No one appears to be racing to finish a thought. That consistency creates authority without aggression. The power lies not in volume, but in control. You can begin practicing this immediately. The adjustment is subtle. Stretch your vowels slightly. Allow the final word of each sentence to land fully before beginning the next. If you normally speak at a 7 in speed, move to a 6. Not exaggerated slowness, just enough to remove urgency. You will feel strange at first. Your brain may interpret the slower pace as awkward, but others will interpret it as grounded. When your pacing steadies, people lean in rather than pull away. They stop bracing for rapid exchange and start listening more carefully. Calm cadence carries weight, and weight changes how you are treated. There is another habit that quietly shifts perception: the impulse to over-explain. Imagine you make a decision and immediately begin justifying it. You provide context. You soften it with disclaimers. You add reassurance. By the end, your original clarity has been diluted by apology. The intention is kind. You want others to understand your reasoning. But excessive explanation can signal doubt before anyone questions you. Most people over-explain because they fear misunderstanding. They want harmony. They want to avoid conflict. But authority rarely feels compelled to defend itself preemptively. When you provide too many reasons before being asked, you imply that your decision needs defense. And the more you defend, the more others unconsciously look for weaknesses. In many Japanese corporate settings, a manager will state a direction simply and calmly. Let's proceed this way. The explanation comes only if requested. The brevity implies thoughtfulness has already occurred. There is no scramble to justify. The clarity stands on its own. That quiet decisiveness creates structure in the room. You can adopt this gently. The next time you state a preference or boundary, say it in one clear sentence. Then stop. Resist adding filler. Let the sentence breathe. If someone asks for clarification, offer it calmly. But do not anticipate objections before they exist. Brevity signals internal certainty. Excessive explanation signals emotional negotiation. When your words become cleaner, your presence becomes firmer. People respond differently to clarity than to over-justification. They may not know why, but they feel it. The third shift happens in your micro-reactions. Someone makes a comment that is slightly dismissive. Someone interrupts you. Someone disagrees sharply. And your face changes instantly. Your tone shifts. You rush to defend or to correct. This is human. And emotional reflexes are wired for protection. But immediate visible reaction communicates something deeper: that your emotional state is easily influenced. In Japanese culture, there is the concept of tatami, the controlled outward expression that maintains harmony. This does not mean suppressing authenticity. It means regulating reaction. Even when disagreement exists, the face remains neutral. The response remains measured. That stability prevents escalation and preserves authority. You can practice this by inserting one breath between stimulus and response. When someone challenges you, hold eye contact softly for a moment. Exhale gently. Then answer in the same tone you were using before. Not colder, not sharper, just steady. That steadiness communicates that you are not thrown off balance. Emotional control is not about being robotic. It is about being anchored. When others sense that your mood does not swing with every comment, they begin to treat you as emotionally self-contained. And emotional self-containment is often mistaken, correctly, for strength. There is a particular kind of discomfort that most people try to escape immediately: silence. A conversation pauses, and within seconds, someone rushes to fill the gap. Maybe it is you. A small joke, a clarification that was not necessary, a quick addition to keep the flow alive. The impulse feels harmless. But silence is not empty space. It is psychological territory. And the person who can stand in it comfortably often becomes the center of gravity in the interaction. When you rush to fill silence, you signal that you are uneasy with stillness. The brain of the other person registers this unease. They may not consciously notice it, but they feel the movement. In contrast, when someone allows silence to stretch calmly, it creates a subtle pressure. Others begin to lean in. They feel compelled to respond. Silence, when held without tension, communicates that you are not afraid of disapproval, not afraid of awkwardness, not afraid of space. And fearlessness around space reads as confidence. In Japan, silence is not automatically interpreted as awkward. It is often seen as thoughtful. A pause before answering suggests consideration. A quiet moment in conversation is not a failure. It is breathing room. In tea ceremonies, in formal meetings, in traditional exchanges, pauses are built into the rhythm. For 2 full breaths. Maintain relaxed for 2 full breaths. Maintain relaxed posture. Soften your gaze. Notice how often the other person begins speaking to fill the space instead. The goal is not dominance, it is comfort. Comfort in silence signals internal steadiness, and steadiness changes how people position you. Another subtle habit that shifts perception is nervous smiling. Smiling is beautiful. It connects people. But when a smile appears automatically, especially in moments of tension, it can dilute your presence. If you smile immediately after stating an opinion, it can soften the impact of your words. If you smile when someone challenges you, it can signal appeasement rather than composure. Many people develop this reflex early in life. Smiling kept situations smooth. It reduced friction. It made others feel safe. But when the smile appears out of anxiety rather than warmth, the nervous system behind it becomes visible, and people, again unconsciously, adjust. In Japan, facial expressions are often more restrained in professional settings. Emotion is present, but not exaggerated. A smile appears intentionally, not continuously. That restraint gives each expression weight. When a smile does come, it feels genuine rather than protective. You do not need to become expressionless. Simply notice when you are smiling to relieve tension rather than to express warmth. Practice holding a neutral, relaxed face when listening. Allow your expression to reflect calm instead of urgency. When you do smile, let it be slower, softer, grounded. Intentional warmth carries more influence than reflex appeasement. The way you move also speaks before you do. Fast gestures, quick shifts in posture, sudden movements when standing up. These are signs of an activated nervous system. Even if your words are calm, rapid physical motion suggests internal restlessness. The brain of the observer registers movement speed as a signal of stability. Watch someone who moves slowly and deliberately. They do not rush to grab objects. They stand up without jerking forward. They place items down gently. Their body seems to operate at a slightly slower tempo than the room. This tempo communicates grounding. It suggests that they are not reacting. They are choosing. Japanese tea ceremonies are a powerful example. Every movement is measured. The lifting of the cup, the turning of the wrist, the placement of the bowl. Nothing is hurried. The slowness itself becomes dignified. It transforms ordinary action into presence. You can integrate this quietly. When you stand up from a chair, rise 1 beat slower. When you reach for your phone, Do it smoothly rather than abruptly. When you walk into a room, take one steady breath before speaking. These micro-adjustments calm your own nervous system and broadcast that calm outward. When your movements slow, your energy stabilizes. When your energy stabilizes, others unconsciously adjust around you. You do not need to announce authority. Your pace begins to suggest it. There is a quiet habit that changes how people relate to you more than almost anything else, and it has nothing to do with what you say. It has to do with how much you depend on immediate validation. After you share an idea, do you instantly scan faces to see if they approve? After you make a joke, do you look for laughter to confirm it landed? After you express an opinion, do you subtly wait for nods before continuing? These are small movements, almost invisible, but they reveal where your emotional anchor is placed. When your anchor is outside of you, your body searches for reassurance, and people feel that search, not consciously, but instinctively. The more you check for approval, the more you signal that approval determines your stability. And when stability depends on others, your position in the interaction shifts downward. This does not mean you are insecure. Wanting connection is human. Wanting positive feedback is natural. But there is a difference between enjoying validation and needing it to regulate your state. When you detach from immediate reactions, when you say something and allow it to stand without scanning, your presence feels different. It feels self-contained. In Japanese culture, there is a quiet emphasis on inner alignment rather than external applause. Craftsmanship, discipline, and personal standards are often valued more than visible praise. The work stands on its own. The person stands on their own. Applause may come, but it is not chased. You can begin practicing this by holding your gaze steady after you speak. Do not rush to read the room. Deliver your sentence. Breathe once, and let silence exist. If someone disagrees, remain grounded. If someone agrees, accept it without leaning into it. When your emotional state does not fluctuate with every micro-response, people begin to treat you as stable, and stability earns a different tone from others. Another shift happens in the way you express opinions. Many people, when sharing a viewpoint, wrap it in layers of explanation, qualifiers, and emotional cushioning. I might be wrong, but this is just my opinion. It's a but. I don't know if this makes sense. These phrases feel polite. They soften potential friction, but they also reduce the perceived strength of your perspective before anyone challenges it. Clarity carries power. When you state an opinion briefly and calmly, it feels grounded. I see it differently. I think we should try another approach. That doesn't work for me. These sentences are short. They do not attack. They do not over-defend. They simply exist. In many Japanese discussions, brevity is respected. Long emotional arguments are rare in formal settings. A concise statement, delivered calmly, carries more influence than a passionate monologue. The weight is in the restraint. You can experiment with reducing your opinion length by half. Say what you think in 1 or 2 sentences. Then stop. Let others respond. Notice how the energy shifts when you are not trying to convince, but simply to state. When you stop chasing agreement, disagreement loses its threat. And when disagreement loses its threat, your presence grows steadier. The final habit in this series is emotional energy stability. Some people are warm and enthusiastic one moment, withdrawn the next, irritated the next. Their internal state fluctuates visibly, and while emotion is human, unpredictability creates subtle tension. Others do not know which version of you they will meet. That unpredictability reduces the sense of psychological safety around you. In Japan, predictability in demeanor is often associated with maturity, not emotional suppression, but consistency. A calm tone in disagreement, a steady demeanor under pressure, a measured response to praise. This consistency builds trust. People relax around those whose emotional climate remains stable. You can begin by monitoring your tone across situations. Aim for steadiness rather than intensity. When you are excited, remain grounded. When you are frustrated, lower your volume instead of raising it. When you are praised, accept it without exaggerated reaction. Emotional regulation does not make you dull. It makes you reliable. When others sense that your internal weather does not swing dramatically, they begin to orient around you differently. They interrupt less. They test you less. They listen more carefully. Not because you demanded respect, but because your consistency quietly suggested it. At this point, you might notice something important. None of these shifts require you to become louder, colder, or more dominant. You are not being asked to overpower anyone. You are not being told to change your personality. The foundation of all these habits is not aggression, it is regulation. And regulation is quiet. If you have ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or lightly dismissed, it is easy to internalize that as a reflection of your worth. You may have thought, maybe I am just not that person. Maybe I don't command respect. But the truth is more mechanical than emotional. Human beings constantly scan for nervous system signals. They read steadiness as strength. They read urgency as uncertainty. They read containment as confidence. When your inner state becomes more stable, your outer signals change automatically. You were never lacking value. You were simply broadcasting faster than you realized, speaking a little too quickly, reacting a little too visibly, explaining a little too much, smiling a little too reflexively. None of these make you weak. They simply shape perception, and perception shapes treatment. In Japanese philosophy, there is often admiration for quiet strength, a form of power that does not announce itself, strength that does not chase attention, presence that does not demand recognition. The phrase shizuka na chikara, quiet power, reflects this idea. It is not dramatic. It is consistent. It is composed. And because it is composed, it draws respect without asking for it. You do not need to apply all 9 habits at once. In fact, trying to overhaul yourself overnight would contradict the very steadiness you are building. Choose one. Perhaps it is slowing your speech by 10%. Perhaps it is holding eye contact 1 second longer before responding. Perhaps it is allowing silence to sit without rescuing it. Practice that single adjustment for 7 days. Notice how your body feels when you do it. At first, you may feel exposed. Slowing down can feel vulnerable. Not over-explaining can feel risky. But stay with it. Over time, your nervous system adapts. The new pace becomes natural. And when your pace changes, the environment subtly reorganizes. You may find that people interrupt you less, that your suggestions are considered more carefully, that disagreements feel calmer, that you feel less drained after conversations. These are not dramatic transformations. They are quiet recalibrations. Change your tempo and watch how others adjust their rhythm around you. In the end, none of this is about manipulating people. It is not about becoming distant or calculated. It is not about withholding warmth to gain leverage. It is about alignment. When your inner state is steady, Your outer signals become clean. And when your signals are clean, people respond differently without being told to. You do not need to demand respect. Demanding usually signals that it feels absent. You do not need to prove your worth in every interaction. Proving suggests doubt. Instead, you cultivate steadiness. You slow your pacing slightly. You allow silence to exist. You reduce unnecessary explanation. You detach from the need to monitor every reaction. You regulate your expressions and movements just enough to show that your center is within you. Respect is rarely granted because someone asks for it. It emerges when others sense that your emotional balance does not depend on them. When you stop chasing approval, approval becomes less withheld. When you stop overcorrecting for discomfort, others stop testing your boundaries. When your mood remains even, your presence feels reliable. This is not about becoming unfeeling. You can still be warm. You can still laugh. You can still care deeply. But the care comes from a grounded place, not from a need to secure position. That subtle difference changes the way people approach you. If you have felt invisible at times, or lightly underestimated, remember this: you were never lacking value. You were simply moving at a tempo that invited interruption. Adjust the tempo. Stabilize the signal. Let your presence settle before your words arrive. When you stop chasing approval, people stop withholding it.